The emergency beacon screamed across 17 star systems, its desperate frequency cutting through hyperspace static like a knife through silk. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the merchant vessel, Aurora's Pride, watching the translated message scroll across her tactical display. Her weathered hands gripped the command rail as the words sank in. Galactic Queen Zephyra of the Ethereal Dominion captured by Void Reapers. Royal fleet destroyed. All Allied forces retreat to safe zones. Do not attempt rescue. Repeat, do not attempt rescue. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Sarah's crew of 12 humans stared at the message, processing what it meant for the galaxy. The Ethereal Dominion had been humanity's first and strongest ally when Earth joined the galactic community 40 years ago. Queen Zephyra herself had welcomed the strange bipedal species with open arms, fascinated by their unusual tendency to fight impossible odds. "Captain," whispered Navigator Tom Rodriguez, his voice barely audible. "The Void Reapers haven't taken prisoners in 3 centuries. They consume everything they touch." Sarah nodded grimly. The Void Reapers were the galaxy's nightmare made real. Born from the dark spaces between stars, they fed on life energy itself. When they emerged from their interdimensional rifts, entire worlds went silent within days. Their ships looked like twisted metal sculptures, all sharp angles and hungry darkness, and they left nothing but empty husks behind. The Aurora's Pride was just a cargo hauler carrying medical supplies to the Outer Rim colonies. They had basic shields, minimal weapons, and a crew trained for trade negotiations, not combat. By any reasonable standard, they should follow the message's advice and flee to safety. "Ma'am," called out Communications Officer Lisa Park from her station, "I'm picking up chatter from other ships. The Zelthari battlecruiser, Starfire, just jumped to hyperspace heading for the core worlds. The Morphic Coalition's entire 7th Fleet is pulling back to defensive positions." Sarah walked to the main view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, Queen Zephyra was trapped aboard a Void Reaper vessel, probably being slowly drained of her life force. The elegant, crystalline being who had shown such kindness to humanity was facing a fate worse than death. "Captain Chen," came a new voice. Dr. Marcus Webb, their chief medical officer, had entered the bridge. His face was pale but determined. "I've been monitoring the emergency frequencies. The Queen isn't just a political prisoner. The Void Reapers are using some kind of extraction process on her. They're trying to drain her royal bloodline's unique psychic abilities." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Queen Zephyra's lineage carried genetic markers that allowed them to commune with the living energy that flowed through hyperspace itself. If the Void Reapers could harness that power, they would become unstoppable. They could track any ship through hyperspace, appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. Based on previous encounters with similar extractions, Dr. Webb consulted his tablet, maybe 72 hours before the process becomes irreversible. After that, even if we rescued her, she'd be nothing more than an empty shell. Sarah turned to face her crew. These weren't soldiers or heroes. They were ordinary people who had signed on to haul cargo and see the galaxy. Tom Rodriguez was saving money to buy his family a farm on New Terra. Lisa Park was working her way through communications college. Engineer Jake Morrison had 3 kids back on Earth. None of them had asked to make a decision that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. "I won't order anyone to do this," Sarah said quietly. "What I'm about to propose goes against every regulation in the Merchant Marine Handbook. It's probably suicide, and even if we succeed, we'll be marked as outlaws by half the galaxy's governments." She paused, meeting each of their eyes in turn. But that woman out there saved my brother's colony ship when no one else would help. When the hegemony blockaded the Kepler system, she personally led a relief convoy through their lines. She's not just an alien queen to me, she's the reason my family is still alive." The bridge remained silent for a long moment. Then Jake Morrison spoke up from the engine station. "Captain, I've got kids. I want them to grow up in a galaxy where the good guys sometimes win." Lisa Park nodded from her communication console. "The Queen sponsored my scholarship program. Without her, I'd still be scrubbing deck plates on a mining station." One by one, the crew voiced their agreement, not out of duty or patriotism, but because of personal connections to the woman who had made their lives better, because sometimes someone had to take the impossible risk. "All right then," Sarah said, settling into her command chair. "Tom, plot a course for the Shadowlands Nebula. That's where they're holding her, based on the beacon's last transmission. Lisa, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're investigating a distress signal and we'll be out of contact for a while." "What's our plan, Captain?" asked Security Chief David Patel. Sarah pulled up the tactical display, showing the nebula's swirling purple clouds. The Void Reapers chose that location because it interferes with most sensors. They can hide their base ship in the electromagnetic storms, but human sensors work differently than most species. We might be able to get close enough for a surprise attack. Dr. Webb raised his hand. "Captain, what exactly are we going to attack them with? Our cargo bay is full of medical supplies, not weapons." A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. "Marcus, you've just given me an idea. Those medical supplies include industrial-grade surgical lasers, emergency plasma cutters, and about 50 tons of liquid oxygen. Jake, how long would it take you to rig those into something that could punch through Void Reaper hull plating?" The engineer scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Give me 12 hours and I can turn this cargo hauler into something that would make a dreadnought think twice." As the Aurora's Pride jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the most dangerous region of known space, Sarah felt the weight of their decision settling on her shoulders. They were 12 humans, in a converted cargo ship, going up against creatures that had conquered star systems. The smart money said they would all be dead within 48 hours. But Sarah had learned something about humanity during their 4 decades among the stars. When faced with impossible odds, when everyone else was retreating, when the smart move was to run and hide, humans had a tendency to do something completely insane instead. They called it heroism. The rest of the galaxy called it madness. The nebula loomed ahead of them, a vast cloud of purple and black that seemed to swallow light itself. Somewhere in its depths, Queen Zephyra was fighting for her life and her sanity. And 12 humans were about to prove why their species had earned a reputation for doing the impossible. "Time to intercept?" Sarah asked. 18 hours at maximum burn, Tom replied. Sarah nodded and activated the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're heading into a combat situation against overwhelming odds. I want everyone to understand what we're up against. The Void Reapers don't just kill you. They drain every bit of life force from your body, leaving nothing but dust behind. If you want to change your mind, now's the time." The response came back immediately from all stations. They were committed. The Aurora's Pride raced through hyperspace, its modified engines pushing beyond safe limits. In the cargo bay, Jake Morrison and his team worked frantically to convert medical equipment into weapons. They had no military training, no combat experience, and no idea if their improvised plan would work. But they had something the Void Reapers couldn't understand. They had chosen to risk everything for someone who wasn't even their own species, simply because it was the right thing to do. And in a galaxy full of ancient races who had grown cautious and calculating, that kind of reckless courage was about to become a very dangerous weapon. The countdown to the most audacious rescue attempt in galactic history had begun. The Shadowlands Nebula stretched before them like a cosmic graveyard, its purple-black clouds crackling with violent energy storms. The Aurora's Pride dropped out of hyperspace at the nebula's edge, immediately feeling the electromagnetic interference wash over their systems like static electricity. "Sensors are getting scrambled," reported Tom Rodriguez from his navigation station. "Whatever's in there is playing havoc with our equipment." Captain Sarah Chen studied the swirling chaos ahead of them. Somewhere in those deadly clouds, the Void Reapers had built their extraction facility. Traditional sensors would be useless, but Sarah was counting on human adaptability to give them an edge. "Lisa, activate the human-designed proximity scanners." "Jake, how are our improvised weapons coming along?" Engineer Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he climbed onto the bridge. "We've got 6 surgical lasers mounted on rotating platforms, plasma cutters rigged as torpedo launchers, and I've managed to convert our cargo bay into one massive pressure bomb. If we can get close enough to their ship, we can blow a hole big enough to drive a shuttle through." Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his medical station, concern etched on his features. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Queen's physiological data from our diplomatic files. The extraction process the Void Reapers use creates massive neural trauma. Even if we rescue her, she might not survive the journey home without immediate medical intervention." "What do you need?" Sarah asked without hesitation. "I need to get aboard their ship before they complete the extraction. I need to treat her while she's still connected to their equipment, then gradually separate her from their life-draining apparatus. It's going to require me to go with the assault team." Security Chief David Patel shook his head. "Doc, with respect, you're not trained for combat. These aren't regular pirates we're dealing with. Void Reapers are pure nightmare fuel." Dr. Webb's jaw set stubbornly. "That woman out there doesn't have the luxury of waiting for someone with better combat training to figure out alien medical technology." "I'm going." The ship suddenly shuddered as they entered the nebula's outer edge. Arcs of purple energy danced across their hull, and several non-essential systems flickered. "Contact bearing 047, Lisa Park called out suddenly. "It's huge, Captain. Much larger than anything in our databases." On the main screen, a massive structure began to resolve through the interference. The Void Reaper extraction facility looked like a twisted cathedral made of black metal and pulsing organic matter. Tendrils of energy reached out from it into the nebula's storms, feeding off the chaotic electromagnetic fields. "My God," whispered Tom. "That thing must be 15 kilometers long." Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. They had expected a ship, maybe a small base. This was a mobile fortress designed to process entire populations. But there, attached to the structure's underside like a parasite, was a smaller vessel that matched the description of Queen Zephyra's royal transport. "There," she pointed. "The Queen's ship is still intact. They're keeping her alive for the extraction." Jake studied the facility's design through their sensors. "Captain, I'm seeing massive energy conduits running from the Queen's ship into the main structure. They're channeling her life force into some kind of amplification matrix." "Can we cut those conduits?" "Not from out here. We'd need to get inside their shields and place charges directly on the connecting points." Sarah turned to her crew, seeing the same grim determination in their faces that she felt in her own heart. "All right, here's what we're going to do. This facility is designed to handle massive capital ships, not a small cargo hauler. We're going to use our size against them." She activated the tactical display, highlighting their approach vector. "We'll come in fast and low, using the nebula's interference to mask our approach. Jake's rigged the cargo bay as a massive breaching charge. We'll ram it directly into the connection point between the facility and the Queen's ship." Dr. Webb stepped forward. "That's suicide, Captain." "Not necessarily," Sarah replied. "The cargo bay can be ejected and detonated remotely. We'll use the explosion to create our entry point, then take a shuttle through the breach. It's crazy enough that they might not expect it." Communications Officer Lisa Park suddenly looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm receiving something on the emergency frequency. It's from inside the facility. Put it through." The voice that emerged was weak but unmistakably regal. Queen Zephyra's crystalline tones carried pain and exhaustion, but also defiant strength. "To any vessels receiving this transmission, stay away. The Void Reapers are using me as bait to lure rescue attempts. They have learned to feed on courage itself. Do not sacrifice yourselves for me." The bridge fell silent as the message repeated. Sarah felt a surge of angry determination. The Void Reapers weren't just extracting the Queen's psychic abilities, they were trying to break her spirit, to make her complicit in preventing any rescue attempts. "Like hell," Sarah muttered. She activated the ship's communication system. "Your Majesty, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the merchant vessel, Aurora's Pride. My brother commanded the colony ship you saved at Kepler 7. I'm coming to return the favor." A long pause, then Queen Zephyra's voice returned, stronger now. "Captain Chen, you must understand what you face. These creatures do not simply kill. They consume everything that makes you who you are." "Then they've never met humans before," Sarah replied. "We specialize in being too stubborn to know when we're beaten." The facility ahead of them suddenly came alive with activity. Smaller Void Reaper ships began emerging from docking bays like angry insects from a disturbed nest. Their vessels looked like twisted sculptures of black metal and void energy, completely alien to anything in the galactic databases. "They've detected us," reported Tom from navigation. "Multiple contacts inbound." "How many?" Sarah asked. "At least 20 fighter-class vessels, and something much larger launching from the main facility." Sarah gripped her command chair. This was it. No turning back now. "All hands, battle stations. Jake, prepare to jettison the cargo bay on my mark. Tom, give me everything the engines have got." The Aurora's Pride accelerated toward the facility, its modified engines screaming with the strain. The Void Reaper fighters moved to intercept, their weapons charging with sickly purple energy. "They're opening fire," David Patel called out from the security station. Energy beams lanced through space, missing the small cargo ship by meters. Sarah jerked the ship into an evasive pattern, using every trick she'd learned in 40 years of dodging pirates and customs officials. "Distance to target," she called out. 2 kilometers and closing," Tom replied. A Void Reaper fighter swooped in close, its weapon ports glowing. At the last second, Lisa Park activated one of their jury-rigged surgical lasers. The precise beam struck the alien craft's power coupling, and it spiraled away, trailing dark energy. "Did we just kill a Void Reaper?" Jake asked in amazement. "Don't celebrate yet," Sarah warned. "Here comes the big one." A massive Void Reaper cruiser emerged from the facility's main bay. It looked like a living nightmare, all organic curves and predatory hunger. Energy tentacles reached out from its hull, seeking to ensnare the small human ship. "Cargo bay separation in 10 seconds, Jake announced. "Everyone hang on." The Aurora's Pride shuddered as its cargo bay detached. The massive improvised bomb tumbling through space toward the connection point between the facility and Queen Zephyra's ship. Sarah held her breath, watching the timer count down. The explosion lit up the nebula like a new star. When the energy dissipated, a gaping hole had been torn in the facility's hull, exposing twisted corridors and pulsing organic machinery. "Breach successful," Tom reported. "I'm reading atmosphere on the other side." Sarah turned to her assault team. Dr. Webb, Security Chief Patel, Engineer Morrison, and herself. 4 humans against an entire Void Reaper facility. "Remember, our job isn't to fight the whole facility. We get in, grab the Queen, and get out." As their shuttle raced through the breach into the alien structure, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying into the mouth of some cosmic predator. The walls around them pulsed with veins of dark energy, and the air itself seemed to whisper with malevolent intelligence. But they were committed now. Somewhere in this nightmare maze, Queen Zephyra was fighting for her life and sanity. And 4 humans were about to prove that sometimes the most ordinary people could accomplish the most extraordinary things. The facility's internal defenses began to activate, sensing the intrusion. Mechanical tendrils emerged from the walls, reaching for their shuttle with hungry purpose. "This is where it gets interesting," Sarah muttered, drawing her sidearm and checking her equipment one final time. The rescue of the Galactic Queen was about to begin. The interior of the Void Reaper facility defied every law of physics Sarah Chen thought she understood. Corridors twisted impossibly through dimensions that hurt to look at directly, and the walls pulsed with veins of dark energy that seemed to feed on light itself. The assault team moved carefully through the nightmare architecture, following Dr. Webb's medical scanner toward the strongest life sign readings. "The Queen's signal is getting stronger," Dr. Webb whispered, his voice barely audible above the facility's ominous humming. "But her vital signs are deteriorating rapidly. Whatever they're doing to her, we're running out of time." Security Chief David Patel led the way with his weapon drawn, though all of them wondered if conventional firearms would have any effect on beings that existed partially outside normal space. Behind him, Engineer Jake Morrison carried the portable medical equipment they would need for the extraction, while Sarah brought up the rear with their communication gear. The corridor ahead opened into a vast chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The space was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadow high above. But what dominated the room was the extraction apparatus itself. Queen Zephyra hung suspended in the center of a complex web of energy conduits and organic machinery. Her normally luminescent crystalline skin had dimmed to a pale glow, and her elegant form was connected to dozens of pulsing tubes that seemed to be draining the very essence of her being. Around the chamber, Void Reaper technicians tended to incomprehensible machines, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure darkness. "How many of them are there?" Jake whispered. "At least 20, David replied, studying the chamber through his scope. "And those aren't all technicians. Some of those things look like guards." Dr. Webb was examining his scanner with growing alarm. "Her neural activity is dropping fast. They're not just extracting her psychic abilities, they're trying to download her entire consciousness. If this process continues for another hour, there won't be anything left to save." Sarah studied the chamber's layout, looking for advantages. The humans had one thing going for them. The Void Reapers clearly hadn't expected anyone to be crazy enough to attempt a rescue. Their security was focused outward, watching for attacks from the facility's exterior. "Jake, can you see the main power couplings for that extraction device?" The engineer squinted into the chamber. "Yeah, there are 6 primary energy feeds coming up from the floor. If I could plant charges on those, it would shut down the whole system." "David, what's our best approach?" The security chief studied the enemy positions. "The Void Reapers are spread out around the chamber perimeter. If we create a distraction at the main entrance, we might be able to circle around to the Queen while they're focused on the threat." Sarah nodded. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was what they had. "All right, here's what we do. David and I will make noise at the front entrance. Jake, you use the distraction to get to those power couplings. Marcus, you get to the Queen and start disconnecting her from their equipment." Dr. Webb looked at the chamber with medical eyes. "Sarah, I need at least 10 minutes to safely disconnect her from all those life support systems. If I rush it, the shock could kill her." "Then we buy you 10 minutes. The team split up, moving to their positions. Sarah and David approached the chamber's main entrance while Jake and Dr. Webb circled around through side passages. As they moved into position, Sarah activated her communicator. "Lisa, this is the captain. We're about to make a lot of noise down here. Be ready for immediate extraction." "Understood, Captain. The other Void Reaper ships are still searching the nebula for us, but I can have the shuttle at your position in 30 seconds when you give the word." Sarah took a deep breath and looked at David. Ready to announce ourselves? David grinned and pulled out one of their improvised plasma charges. Let's make an entrance they won't forget. The explosion shattered the chamber's main doorway, sending debris flying across the alien space. Sarah and David charged through the breach, their weapons firing at the nearest Void Reaper technicians. The aliens' forms writhed and shifted as the energy bolts struck them, but they didn't seem to take any real damage. These things are tougher than they look, David called out, diving behind a piece of machinery as dark energy beams lanced toward them. The Void Reapers moved with unnatural speed, their forms flowing like liquid shadow across the chamber floor. Sarah realized that their weapons were barely inconveniencing the aliens, but the distraction was working. All attention was focused on the human assault at the main entrance. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison sprinted across the chamber toward the power couplings, his engineer's eye identifying the most critical connection points. The first charge went onto the primary energy feed, a massive conduit that pulsed with stolen life force. As he attached the explosive, he felt a wave of revulsion wash over him. The conduit was warm to the touch, and he could swear he heard whispered voices inside it. At the extraction device, Dr. Webb began the delicate process of disconnecting Queen Zephyra from the Void Reaper machinery. His medical training had never prepared him for alien technology that seemed to be partially alive. But he worked with steady hands, following the energy patterns to identify which connections were critical and which could be safely severed. "Your Majesty, can you hear me?" he whispered as he worked. Queen Zephyra's eyes fluttered open, focusing on his face with difficulty. "Human," she gasped, her voice barely audible. "You should not have come. They will consume you all." "Maybe," Dr. Webb replied, carefully disconnecting another neural interface. "But we humans have a saying, no one left behind. You saved us, now we save you." The Queen's crystalline features showed confusion. "But the cost. Your entire species could be marked for extinction because of this rescue." "Your Majesty," Dr. Webb said gently, "you clearly don't understand humans very well. We've been marked for extinction by half the galaxy at one time or another. We're still here." Across the chamber, Sarah and David were running low on ammunition, and the Void Reapers were beginning to coordinate their attacks. Dark energy beams crisscrossed the space, and Sarah could feel the air itself growing cold as the aliens drew power from the facility's systems. "Jake, how much longer?" she called out. "2 more charges to place," Jake replied, working frantically at the power couplings. "But these things are fighting back. The machinery is trying to heal itself." Indeed, the Void Reaper technology was responding to the damage, organic components growing to replace destroyed connections. Jake realized he would need to trigger his charges manually to prevent the facility from simply repairing itself. "Marcus, whatever you're doing, do it faster," Sarah called out, as a Void Reaper technician flowed toward their position like living shadow. Dr. Webb was working on the final connections, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. Queen Zephyra's vital signs were strengthening as he freed her from the extraction matrix, but she was still critically weak. "Almost there," he reported, "but she's going to need immediate medical support during transport." That's when the chamber's main doors exploded inward again, but this time it wasn't the humans making an entrance. A massive Void Reaper commander flowed into the space, its form larger and more terrifying than any of the others. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Interesting," the creature said, its words dripping with malevolent intelligence. "Humans. We had wondered when your species would prove useful for harvesting. Your emotional intensity is quite remarkable." Sarah felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she pushed it down. Fear was just another enemy to overcome. "Sorry to disappoint you, but we're not planning to stick around for your extraction process." The Void Reaper commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass and dying stars. You misunderstand. Your rescue attempt has provided us with something far more valuable than one ethereal royal. You have demonstrated the depths of human courage and determination. When we harvest those qualities from your species, we will be unstoppable. Jake Morrison looked up from the final power coupling, his face grim. Captain, these charges are ready to go, but I'll have to trigger them manually. The facility's defensive systems are blocking our remote detonators. Sarah understood immediately. Jake was volunteering to stay behind, to sacrifice himself to ensure their escape. But before she could respond, something unexpected happened. Queen Zephyra, freed from the extraction matrix, began to glow with renewed energy. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the authority of centuries of rule. "Void Reapers," she said, rising to her feet with Dr. Webb's support, "you have made a critical error. You assumed that courage and determination could be harvested like any other resource. But those qualities cannot be taken. They can only be given freely." The Queen raised her hands, and energy began to flow through the chamber, but not the dark corruption of the Void Reapers. This was pure life force, the power that connected all living beings across the galaxy. "And these humans," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "have given their courage freely, not for conquest or power, but for compassion. That makes it stronger than anything you can steal." The energy wave that erupted from Queen Zephyra struck the Void Reapers like a physical force. The aliens shrieked as their stolen power was turned against them, their shadowy forms beginning to destabilize. The facility itself began to shake as the fundamental forces that held it together were disrupted. "Everyone out now," Sarah called out, helping Dr. Webb support the Queen as they ran toward their shuttle. Jake triggered his charges as they reached the extraction point, and the facility's power grid exploded in a cascade of overloading systems. Behind them, the Void Reaper commander's furious roars echoed through the collapsing structure. The shuttle raced through the facility's corridors as the entire structure began to tear itself apart. Lisa Park's voice crackled over the communicator. "Aurora's Pride! Standing by for pickup! You've got about 30 seconds before this whole place comes down!" They burst through the breach in the facility's hull just as the shuttle bay of their ship came into view. Behind them, the massive Void Reaper extraction facility was collapsing in on itself, its stolen energies spiraling out of control. As the Aurora's Pride jumped to hyperspace, leaving the dying facility behind, Dr. Webb worked frantically to stabilize Queen Zephyra's condition. The Royal Medical Staff would need to take over once they reached Allied space, but he had done everything possible with the equipment available. "Will she be all right?" Sarah asked, looking down at the crystalline figure resting on their improvised medical bed. "She'll recover," Dr. Webb replied. "But it's going to take time. The damage they did to her psychic centers is extensive." Queen Zephyra opened her eyes, focusing on Sarah with effort. "Captain Chen, what you and your crew have done today will not be forgotten. You have proven something important about humanity." "What's that, Your Majesty?" The Queen smiled weakly. "That courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of fear because someone needs help. Your species may be young compared to ours, but you understand something about heroism that many ancient races have forgotten." Sarah looked around at her crew. Jake Morrison, who had been willing to sacrifice himself for people he'd never met. Dr. Webb, who had risked everything to save an alien life. David Patel and Lisa Park and Tom Rodriguez and all the others who had chosen the impossible because it was right. "Your Majesty," Sarah said quietly, "I think you're giving us too much credit. We're just people who got tired of watching the bad guys win." 3 days later, when they delivered Queen Zephyra to the Ethereal Dominion's medical facilities, the galaxy learned about the rescue of the Galactic Queen. The story spread from system to system, gaining new details with each telling. Some versions claimed there were hundreds of humans involved, others insisted they had used secret weapons or impossible technology. But those who knew the truth understood something more important. 12 ordinary humans in a cargo ship had accomplished what entire fleets had declared impossible, not because they were stronger or smarter or better equipped, but because when faced with an injustice, they had decided to do something about it. The Void Reapers, their facility destroyed and their extraction process disrupted, retreated to the dark spaces between stars. They would return eventually, but now they knew something they hadn't known before. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated. And across the galaxy, other species began to whisper a new phrase when describing acts of impossible courage: human bold. It became the standard by which desperate heroism was measured, the benchmark for risking everything to do what was right. Captain Sarah Chen never considered herself a hero, neither did her crew. But they had proven something that would echo through galactic history. Sometimes, the most ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary things. And sometimes, being foolish enough to help someone in need is the wisest thing you can do. The Aurora's Pride returned to its regular cargo runs, carrying medical supplies to the Outer Rim colonies. But now, when pirates or slavers saw their transponder signal, they thought twice about causing trouble. After all, these were the humans who had rescued the Galactic Queen, and in the depths of space, other emergencies would arise. Other impossible rescues would be needed. When they did, there would be humans ready to prove once again that courage, freely given, was the strongest force in the universe.